I started lifting weights in high school, so I finished my junior season of football, and I did very well. And then I was like, probably like go play in university. The unfortunate reality is, and I've talked about this at length. 11th grade is probably a little bit late to declare that you're going to go play football at college. And so I was like, all right, well, I got to lift weights and I got to get as strong as possible. So I just started running West Side Barbell for Skinny Bastards by Joe DeFranco. 2 years later, I went from 161 to 231. I reported to training camp at 231. Um, and then, I had always been reading like the Elite FTS stuff, right? Like T Nation articles. So I always kind of had powerlifting in my background or in my periphery, right? And this was right when the Lillibridges were big. So I was obsessed with, Eric and Ernie Lillibridge. Um, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And I ended up playing 2 years of football in college, 2 years of rugby in college, and I was training like a psychopath the entire time. I was doing Olympic lifting for a lot of it, and then I ended up having a traumatic brain injury in my halfway through my senior season of football. And then after that, they're like, "Yeah, dude, your brain is soup. You cannot continue to play contact sports." And I was like, "All right, well, I'm already the strongest kid on the team, and there's a sport where you just lift weights and don't hit your head, so I'm just gonna do that."
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's slowly like what powerlifting is becoming, and like I think it's great. Like for instance, my girlfriend, she played college soccer at Central actually, and she tore her meniscus three separate occasions, and she like tore her ACL. Her knee is fucked up, man. Like for
Yeah.
real. Like she's had it repaired three different times, and so she like medically retired from soccer, and she was like, I just don't know like what my thing is going to be now, like
Hmm.
especially because college sports, like especially Division 1 level, like that is your life outside of obviously being a student, like that is most of your identity like at that time in your life. So like I think powerlifting is super cool because it's like very easy for someone to go from like that and then like losing their thing to like powerlifting where it's just like you could go to a meet on any given Saturday and find like a 12-year-old lifting with his 45-year-old dad in the masters category, and they're like it's cool, but like there's also people that can, you can go as far as you want with it really.
Hmm.
So, okay, that's cool. Did you play football and rugby at this or at the same time or different?
Yeah. So how it worked is, so I played in my freshman year, and I ended up like flunking out of all my classes because it was like you let the monkey out of the cage and he doesn't know what to do. And then there are, and I'm sure your girlfriend can speak to this as well. There's academic requirements for
Yeah.
maintaining your scholarship and stuff. And I lost all those. And I was like, well, I'm not going to fucking just go out and do this for the love of the game. And rugby was like technically a different subset of student athletics. So it didn't have the same academic requirements, and they'd still help you out and stuff, but it didn't have the same academic requirements. So I was like, okay, well, like I've played sevens before, which is like a subset of rugby. So I played 2 seasons of that. By the second season, I was team captain. And then I was actually squatting next to our defensive coordinator because his name's Devin Murphy, awesome guy. And he's like, yeah, you're like really big and strong right now. Like, do you want to come back and I'll give you your scholarship back and then you can just play again? And I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, do you want to play interior D line? Because I was pretty big at the time. I was probably 255, 260. I was like, yeah, I'll play three tech. And then I went back, and then winter camp I was defensive line, and then they switched me to fullback, and then spring camp was all playing fullback, and then come fall they were like, yeah, we need you back on interior D line, and I was like, all right. So I had to go from I had been dieting down so I could play fullback, and then they tell me like 12 weeks out of training camp, they're like, hey, we need you at like report at like 270. I was like, okay, well, I got to go down. I got to go from 234 to 270 in 12 weeks. So let's just pack it on. And so that's kind of the temporal association was like freshman year football, and then sophomore and junior year rugby, and then senior year football. But I also like I played rugby every summer as well.
That's cool. Um, what is like the I have a friend who actually he just started recently playing in like in my hometown from the UP. In our hometown, we have like a rugby like club kind of thing, and
Hmm.
they set it up to where there's like a few teams around the area that they play together. Like the way he explained it to me is that like watching it, you're like, oh, it's like football, but then you get there and it's like this is nothing like football, like at all.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
like ha I guess like what were some of like the big adjustments you had to do to like adapt to a different sport like that? Because I know it's a lot more rugby's a lot more like laterally based instead of
Hmm.
like football where it's literally just like down the field. Like
Yeah.
how is that? What was like
So,
that?
I mean, I actually adapted to it quicker than most people typically would, just because like in high school, I played offense, defense, kickoff return, punt return. Like I played the whole game.
Yeah.
And so like I had a bunch of experience carrying the ball. I had a bunch of experience tackling and playing defense. And really like the only things that you kind of have to get good at is you have to understand set piece, right? So in rugby, we have these things called set pieces, right? So it's like if you're going to run a play with the backs, that's a set piece. If you're going to run a play with the forwards, that's a set piece. If you have a scrum, that's a set piece. If you have a line out, that's a set piece. And like getting used to scrumming is totally different because the pressure that you experience is like really, really overwhelming, right? So like in my sophomore and junior year, I played loose head prop, which is one of the front row. And so you've seen like in rugby how they just like push like this and try to push each other off the ball.
Yeah.
Um, which eventually moved into offensive and defensive line in football. And the pressure that's created from the scrum, right? Because if you have, you know, I don't know, 900 kilos, 1,000 kilos on each team, because there's 8 players in a scrum, all pushing towards each other. The front row are the ones that bear the brunt of that.
Yeah.
So the pressure is like overwhelming because you have, right, 5 people behind you pushing you into the other team, and then they have 5 people behind them pushing them into you.
Yeah.
So your neck gets super jacked up. Like your thoracic erectors have to be super, super strong, and you have to be very isometrically strong. And then the only other adjustment was like rucking, which is kind of fun because you essentially just like run in as fast as you can and try to blow someone off the ball. The only big adjustment was like once you're on the ground, you lose the rights to the ball,
Hmm.
right? So it's like once you go to ground, you have to place the ball, people have to ruck over you. And then just this idea of like not always running to space, right? Because let's say I have the ball and there's, 4 or 5 people behind me. If I commit a defender an offload, I make the gain line, commit a defender an offload. We're still facing this way. But if I run sideways and I feel like I can take the corner, I've cut off all of these people that are outside of me. And I may not even make it back to the gain line. And I've fucked up all of the players behind me. So, just understanding that it's like you got to run it straight and dealing with the pressure of a scrum and dealing with the pressure of a ruck or just dealing with rucking was the only real adjustments. But other than that, it's like it's pretty similar. And if you're a good football player, you'll be a good rugby player. And I would also make the argument that like football players make the best rugby players.
Yeah. Did you have anything that you carried from like your time at rugby slash football to powerlifting? Like even in terms of like mindset or like approaching competition, like is there anything you can give me on that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I think the big thing was like I was very grateful. So in Canada, the way that we do football is a little bit different, right? So obviously it's like a different sport entirely. It's 3 downs instead of four, 12 players instead of 11. The field's much bigger. But in Canada, in America, you can just play high school football and then go play in college. Like that's very standard. But in Canada, you have to play club football in the summer. So your season typically starts like mid to end of April, and then your high school season will end in November, and you're playing the whole time. So you're playing like 16, sometimes 20 games a year. Um, and the club team that I played for, we were called the Scarborough Thunder, and like we have more CFL and NFL alumni than any other team in the country. Like super, super good. And they had this huge culture. And they would always tell us like, be the hammer, be the hammer, be the hammer, not the nail. And it was just this idea of like aggressive and violent intent towards whatever you do. And it has to be one focus. You cannot be thinking about X or Y or Z. And if you're going to fuck up at full speed. It
Yeah.
was just be aggressive.
Yeah. That's something because I played football not really growing up at all. Like I played one season in like eighth grade just because like
Mhm.
I didn't play any sports at that time and I was like, I'll try football. Because it's like it's a big team. Nobody really gets cut. Like
Mhm.
you might as well. You learn things. But then I ended up coming back to play varsity football my junior and senior year, and that was like the biggest thing I learned because like coming from not really playing football much growing up, and like there's these people. like in my grade that were maybe I had been into lifting for like about a year at this point, like consistently going to the gym and stuff. And there were people that were like not as big as me, not as strong as me, but they were better at football only because they just did not care.
Hmm.
And like that was one of the things I really had to like, it's such like a mental barrier that I had to like get over in football. Like uh when I played like linebacker,
Hmm.
we like our scheme was like very simple. Like we didn't have anything like crazy zone drops, man-to-man coverage. It was like make a step and if you're gonna go, go. Don't
Hmm.
hesitate. Because like one of the biggest misconceptions I see is like people being like, oh, like the people that are the most aggressive in football are usually the ones that get hurt the most. And it's like, yeah, kind of maybe, but like
Yeah.
also the people that are scared running half ass into a running back who's running full ass into them, like that's how you get screwed up. Like if you're gonna
Oh
hit
yeah.
somebody, like hit them hard, wrap up, and like that's it. Like
Yeah.
that
Well,
was
and
one of
then
the things that was crazy.
our coaches always told us to, they're like, I've never been fucked up on the way to go fuck somebody up. And I was like, okay. And the thing too is like, the coaches that I had, in Scarborough, and even plenty of the coaches that I had in college, like they'd all played in the CFL, right? Like we had a bunch of CFL alumni on our coaching staff. And they were like, they'd played long careers, like 8, 10, 12 seasons in the CFL. And they were always like, yo, if you're going to fuck up at full speed and just be aggressive. Because if you're aggressive and in the wrong spot, typically good things happen.
That's yeah, like it's like yeah, might it be, a play action play and you accidentally blitz the quarterback at linebacker? Sure, but like that lineman's fucked up. Like he's
Yeah.
blocking you and not the lineman anymore, so the play's gonna get
Yeah.
disrupted. Like it's better to do that than just hesitate, take up like a square meter of grass that nobody's running to anyway, and just like be a practice dummy. Like,
Yeah.
you might as well do that. Um, yeah, and that's something that I feel like applies really good to powerlifting because it's like, you approach the bar at a meet and it's your third attempt. It's like, yeah, if you're focused on literally anything else besides that dumb barbell with those steel plates, like you're fucked. Like you need to focus on one thing and that's your technique that you've been doing for whatever 16, 20 weeks consistently. And it's like you have one goal and it's literally right now in this moment in these 60 seconds it is to move this weight and then get off the platform. Like
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people, like, they just, what I always tell people is like above 80%, maybe two Qs, above 90%, one Q, and above like 95% is like, just go. Like, don't even think about anything, just go. Because at this point, like, if we have not ingrained your pattern sufficiently going into that third attempt, like, there's no amount of queuing during it that's gonna make a meaningful difference.
yeah, yeah. That's also super important. Like you hear all the time how it's like when you're under like severe pressure or like you're really really nervous about something like you will revert to your instinctual practices and like
Mhm.
for like if you're a power lifter and it's like you haven't been training the comp standard in training, like what do you think's going to happen when you get out there and like you have straight tunnel vision and like you look at the judges, you see all the people in the background, you're like, "Oh, like I'm gonna drop this deadlift because I've dropped every single deadlift in prep because I don't lock out my deadlifts."
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that's just what happens. Like I see so many like missed rack commands in competition and like it'll be a perfect squat, 20-pound PR for someone that's never done a meet before, and then they're just like, oh, there it goes. That was it.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna get your thoughts on a couple of powerlifting related things.
Hmm.
I'm like 2.5 weeks out right now, so like these things are
Hmm.
like interesting to me because they kind of apply to me too. Um, First thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is accessories at like high intensities leading up to a meet. And by
Hmm.
leading up to a meet, I mean like a block out or
Hmm.
like, 6 weeks or less ish. Um, do you think it's something that it's like it gives you something to recover from, or is it kind of unnecessary damage, or is it situational?
So I think the biggest thing, to always take into account when it comes to stuff like that is like how conditioned is the athlete. So it's always going to come back to your baseline level of aerobic conditioning because that's ultimately what's going to dictate your ability to recover from things. Right? And you know this very well from school, we walk around in aerobic metabolism. And if that system is not sufficiently developed, all of the metabolic processes that come as an adjunct, right? Us shuttling waste products out of a cell, us shuttling nutrients into a cell. All of those things do not happen as well. And so, and even like our mitochondrial density, right? Like so many things happen as a byproduct of this aerobic metabolism or having a sufficiently developed aerobic metabolism. And so what I typically say for people is the only time I really deload accessories on people is the last 2 weeks of the meet. But, they're going from like RP 8 to 9 to RP 6 to 7. So you're pulling them back a bit, but also, RP 7 is still like pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like that's still pretty difficult, but the thing that I always kind of have to explain to people is like RP 6 to 7 doesn't mean every single rep moves the exact same speed and you finish it and you could have added 25 pounds and 10 more reps. Right? So it's this very fine line of like they need to understand what the absolute max is in terms of that exercise and then they work a little bit backwards from there. But what I would say for you in this circumstance, how much do you weigh?
225 right now, competing at 231.
Okay. So what I would say is you're 2.5 weeks out,
Yeah,
just shy of 3 weeks.
yeah, 2 Saturdays from yeah, but it's Monday, so
Okay. So this week, keep your RP or keep your accessories at RP 8 to 9. Next week, go to 7 to 8. Week of the meet, go 6 to 7.
sweet.
Pretty
I
easy
have
taper down.
yeah, I have a coach right now, and that's kind of what he gives me. Like
Hmm.
I have this week is actually it's 9 to 10. Um,
Hmm.
but it's like sets of eight, which is
Hmm.
like the reps have been going down, and then yeah, I'm assuming this is gonna be my last for real training week, and then it'll be like
Hmm.
RP goes down, stuff gets slowly
Yeah.
taken out, shuttled out, tapered down, kind of things like that.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, see, I was always wondering about that because like physiologically, the people that are the most trained are the people that detrain the fastest. So like
Hmm.
I I was always curious to see like obviously I would never like pull accessories from somebody, 4 weeks out, but like I wondered if it was like, having accessories in there, would that just make them, more sore? Like would that do more damage than good, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing is like Zatsiorsky and Tudor Bumpa and all of these like Soviet sports scientists, like many, many moons ago. And I'll just say generally the Soviet sports scientists because I don't remember who specifically did this research, but they figured out how long it takes qualities to decay. Right. So they were like, yeah, like aerobic capacity will drop in 3 to 5 days, right? Like whatever will drop in da 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 da. Do you know how long it takes to lose limit strength? A month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, your technical proficiency, your other things may decay much more quickly than that, but
Yeah.
the actual strength itself, the maximum contractile, ability to produce torque at the joint,
Yeah.
that takes a month to decrease.
Yeah. That was kind of something that was uh I had learned we talked about detraining and just tapering, like the differences between them in my exercise physiology class. And it basically said that even at 1/3 of maximum intensity, like that is enough to like keep your peak strength as long as, you're keeping your technique and your frequency and stuff up at the same. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's super empowering for people that are like going through injuries, especially like little injuries, like little tendonitis or something, where it's like you might have to step back for a few weeks. Like, you're probably gonna be fine. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing too is like I remember because I know the research you're referencing and it's I think they did like one single at RP 6 once a week and that maintained your strength.
yeah,
It was like very, very, very minimal.
yeah,
Um, and I think people get like really frazzled, but at the end of the day, it's like if technical proficiency maintains, it doesn't actually require that much to keep your strength.
yeah. Um, do you have any thoughts on? I've seen this happen, more recently, just more on like social media and stuff, and I was curious to get your thoughts from a physiological perspective or just like anecdotally what you've seen with your clients. Bracing in between reps of like, let's say, just for example, a set of 8 on squats, and they do like the first 2 or 3 on one brace.
Hmm.
And then like, they do two more on one brace. Like, is that something that you would like say, hey, don't do that? Or is that something you just kind of like allow?
I think it's load specific, right? Like I remember I did an AMRAP in wraps, which is going to challenge your brace even more. At I think it was 650, and I think I did like 8 or 10. And like I had to rebrace every rep because I couldn't not, because if there was any reduction in spinal rigidity, what would have happened is that those wraps would have forced my leg straight and the bar would have gone over my head. Right. And I think it's mostly a function of load because what you can get away with at, let's say you're a 500-pound squatter and you're doing a set of eight at 335. You can get away with a lot more compared to a 900-pound squatter and you're doing a set of eight at 725.
Yeah.
Right. So I think load is going to be the ultimate determinant of that. And what I will say as an adjunct to that, it's whatever you've practiced.
Okay.
I would say most people, most of the time, we should probably rebrace, rebreathe. That said, if you're used to doing the opposite, whatever you do more consistently, you're going to be better at. I don't know that it really matters to split hairs, but I do train my clients to be like, don't take one breath and do a bunch of reps because then you're also just going to get lightheaded and feel weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I I know your thoughts on this already, but I want to ask you in person to
Mm-hmm.
have in this episode, and that would be, do you have thoughts on straps on deadlift training?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of someone who, might complain and say that it helps because their hands hurt when they deadlift, and the people that just kind of do it to do it.
Yeah. So what I like my rule with clients is you can put on straps if your hands are tearing, right? It's like if you actually just can't hold onto the bar because you've torn your thumb or whatever,
Yeah.
I have no issues. Use straps. What I would say as a general rule most of the time is people, especially with hook grip, mixed grip, I would say is less of an issue, but especially with hook grip, like that is a skill you have to practice. The more touches you have on that skill, the better that skill is going to be. And there is something specifically to be said about what hook gripping at max intensities does and how it deforms your hand, and you need to have practice with that. And what I'll tell people is you're gonna like the more total reps you have with hook grip in a session, or the more total reps you have with grip in a session, the better your grip is going to be. And if someone's hands are torn, yeah, you can use straps, but also like there is a strong correlate. And I had this conversation with my buddy the other day. There's a strong correlate between people who use straps on everything other than their top set and people who drop deadlifts when they're tired in the meet. And so, my the point that I would make in that is, listen, I know what I tell my clients. At the end of the day, I have an opinion on it. If other people want to use straps in their back downs, etc., whatever. You're not fucking paying me. I don't care. If you drop a deadlift in a meet, you are never allowed to use straps again because you have shown that leads to a failure in the meet, and the only time it matters that we're strong is in the meet.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I I don't use them. I pull mixed and I
Mm-hmm.
don't use them for deadlift training like literally ever. If I'm doing like comp deadlift training, like SLDLs or something, like sure. Um, but if I'm I don't know. I just feel like I lose part of my technique because if I pull with like my verses, for example, if I pull with Versa grips, I'm pulling hook or double overhand grip. And I feel like it like kind of pulls me out of position.
Well, your body is used to a certain level of pronation and supination on one arm versus the other. And your
Yeah.
brace is set on that kind of asymmetrical lat position and potentially on that asymmetrical hip position. And you have tons and tons of reps in that position. So now when you put things back to neutral, that's not a pattern you've developed. Like I can't pull with straps on anything other than like RDLs because it just feels off because I'm used to pulling hook.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, and you know this very well from school, there's this idea of like irradiation, right? And if you're trying, right, when you squeeze your hand, you have co-contraction all the way up the chain into your lat, everything.
Yeah.
And if you have a more muscular bias deadlift and you're training a ton of reps without that irradiation, then when you go to do it, it's just not going to feel as good. But
Yeah.
grip also and squeezing onto something also affords us this opportunity to be stronger because we have irradiation. And what I would say as well is some people, uh, if you're doing really high deadlift frequency, like your hands may actually get chewed up, right? Like Olympic lifters, they may be snatching and clean and jerking 5, 6, 7 times a week. Yeah, your hands are going to get torn up and they use straps, and that's fair. But I don't know that I've ever seen an Olympic lifter on a world stage drop a snatch or a clean and jerk, either in the turnover or off the floor. So it's like, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just kind of like a uh if it hurts you, obviously that's going to be a no-no. But
Yeah.
like, like you said, like obviously you literally cannot pull hook grip with a torn thumb. Like it's
Mhm.
it's it's just not going to happen, especially if you're at like any sort of relatively high intensity, not to mention you're never going to want to pick up a deadlift bar again.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so I was curious about this because you've been in the game for a long time, and I think one thing that people, when they either see people powerlifting or they envision themselves powerlifting, um, they always think about like well, I I feel like it's a very dangerous sport and people get hurt a lot. Like, is that a misconception that you
I
see?
think I think that so they've actually done research on this.
Yeah,
And for hours practiced of the sport, I think Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting are like at the absolute bottom.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, what I've seen is, can't remember where I saw it, but I think it was like per 1,000 hours, it's like zero point 0.5 to 1. But then you look at like a contact sport like soccer, basketball, it's like 8, 9.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
I was just considering like how would you have you ever had to do like client onboarding with somebody and they're like, "Well, I've just heard that powerlifting's dangerous." Like what are some things that you would, sell that
So
as?
the funny thing is, a huge component of my job is in this kind of post-surgical rehab space. So it's people who have gotten hurt lifting and they understand that and they're fine with it and they want to get back to strong. Right. And so, for them, it's like they've kind of accepted this. And I think it's if you're scared of getting hurt lifting weights, then don't lift weights. Like you know what I mean? Like no one's forcing you to do it. You can go to a Pilates class, you can do yoga, you can do high rocks, you can do, I don't know, run club. Like I don't care. You can do anything you want to move your body. And if you're scared of lifting weights and you think that it's going to be this massive deleterious thing, it's like, okay, no one's making you. But if you're going to do it, like there's an inherent risk, but the inherent risk is very low. And then people look at me and be like, oh, well, look at what's happened to you. It's like, yeah, dude, I had 10 years of contact sports before I even started powerlifting. Like you put super physiological amount of hormones plus massive amounts of weight plus additional external assistive devices like wraps. Yeah, things are going to fucking tear. Like that's going to happen because I did not make good choices before I started powerlifting.
Yeah. I also think there's like a huge psychological aspect of it too, because if someone joins powerlifting and they're like, "Oh, I'm scared that I'm gonna get hurt," like they're the people that you got to watch out for that are gonna get hurt because they're gonna try to overcorrect themselves or they're gonna constantly sandbag and then in a meet it's gonna like something's gonna build up and then they're more, responsive to like little aches and discomforts coming into the gym. So,
Well, and then there's the thing, right? It's like I don't know if you learned about this in school, but this idea of like top-down modulation.
no, not directly.
Okay, so it's very interesting. So essentially what happens, right? So we have this nociceptive stimuli or this noxious stimuli, and then that travels through the spinal cord up to the brain, and then the brain makes an interpretation on that pain. And it puts it in one of two buckets. It's either this is a big problem or this is not an issue at all. If we put it into the bucket of this is not really a problem, we have like analgesic stimulus, right? So we now produce endogenous opioids and we have a down regulation in that nociceptive stimuli, and you actually experience less pain, right? So you have a reduction in pain in that area. But in these people who are kind of revved up, freaked out, scared to begin with, that top down modulation occurs, and then it goes to the brain, and the brain says, this is a really big deal. And then you have these people freak out when they felt their pec tweak 1 out of 10. And they're like, oh, I can't bench for 2 months. It's like, you're fucking fine, dude. Even if you did tear your pec, it's 6 weeks to get back to baseline in terms of like healing whatever tear you had. Like, no, you're fine.
Yeah. Um, on top of that, is there anything you've taken away from like your personal injuries and applied it to like how to approach injury from a psychological perspective? Because I'm assuming that, the more you get hurt, the better you are at responding to getting hurt.
Yes. And so, I mean, the big thing is, I always tell people is like, time's going to pass either way, right? You're in this injured state. The prognosis based on your issue is 6 months to get back to normal. Time's going to pass either way. And you have one of two choices. One, you either make the determination that this isn't that big a deal. I'm going to nail my rehab. I'm going to push on the things that I can push on. And all these 6 months will pass either way. And I'm going to be much better for it because I will have worked on whatever other weak points I have. Or you can bemoan your circumstances. You can cry over what you've lost. You can cry over the fact that you couldn't do what you did before. And you're going to make your next 6 months a living fucking hell. Only one of those has you end up better at the end. And the negative response 9 times out of 10 leads people to quitting. So it's like, okay, if you want to quit, you can respond like that, but I don't think you want to quit, so shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Anecdotally, I had a back injury about a year ago, a year and 3 or 4 months ago. It was last January, and I was like literally like the strongest I had ever felt, and going into like what I was hoping was going to be like a really huge block. And I came into training one day doing like high bar squats or something, got done with my set, and I literally could not bend over.
Yeah.
So, it like really scared me because never like I said, I didn't play football like all through grade school and stuff, so I never had like any serious like contact injuries, never had any. I've never like broken a bone or anything, so this was like the first thing that like really really struck me. And for like a little while I was really torn down, and it was going into actually a prep for collegiate nationals. I was like 12 weeks out, so I was
Yeah.
like, I can't wait to go to collegiate nationals and squat 300 fucking pounds after I just
Hmm.
squatted, 550 at RPE 6 like week 2. So I was like, this sucks. So my whole thought was, I'm gonna get to this prep. I'm gonna do what I need to do. I ended up actually totaling my PR at collegiate nats, like
Yeah.
even still like with this back pain. Um, and then like after that, I kind of just took the summer off, and I was like, I'm gonna come in the gym, I'm gonna get my stuff done, but I'm not gonna push it because I want to get better. But I feel like, just anecdotally for me, I felt like that made it worse because I was almost scared to get back into the gym and like scared to load up weight again.
Hmm.
So I was wondering if you've had any experience like that where it was kind of like you use that like reverse psychology kind of thing, like if I'm gonna get better, like I need to do it.
Yeah. So before I did both of my knees, in 2019, May of 2019, I tore my left quad, lateral quad, so vastus lateralis up into TFL, so both TFL and lateral quad involvement. And then 5 months later, I did my right quad, exact same injury. Um, and what I did is that I did the STAR method. So STAR method is essentially you go in the day after you get hurt and you do the exact same movement and you start with the bar and you accumulate 100 total reps. And then the next day you come in, you do the exact same thing and you add maybe 10 pounds, maybe 20 pounds. And you just keep doing that until you're up at, I don't know, 225 or something. But you're adding weight every single day based on pain tolerance. And pretty quickly you're back. I think 7 weeks after I tore my left quad, I squatted like 550 for 8 high bar, right? So I was like pretty much back to pre-injury strength. And then my first, even in the session that I got hurt in, I think I squatted before I did my second set. I was meant to do like a 5x5 at like 660 or something, 655 or 660 in reps. And I got through my first set and it was like RP six. And I was like, all right, 660 for five, RP six, like I'm fucking good. Um, and then I got hurt again, and then I did the exact same thing, right? Which is like I just got back on the horse immediately because I could not let the mental stain of this injury linger because then I'm actually just not going to push myself. And when we come to these difficult circumstances in life, it's like you're until death, all defeat is psychological. Like you fucking cannot get scared of stuff. You can be nervous, you can be anxious, but you cannot be fucking scared.
Yeah. I in terms of like me for myself, like looking back at that, I'm glad I made mistakes. I'm glad I did what I did last summer or whatever. Because now that I know that like, oh shit, I can actually just start pushing again as long as I'm like, monitoring my pain, like making sure that nothing's going seriously wrong. But like looking back on it, I mean, I took maybe 4 or 5 months off of squatting anywhere above 60%, and I got this much better. So I
Hmm.
was like, oh, damn it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well,
like,
I mean, and even when you look at this idea of like the biopsychosocial model of pain, right? Um, so it's sensory, cognitive, and affective, right? So sensory is the actual like nociceptive stimuli. Cognitive is your appraisal of the pain. Um, and affective is like fear of what the pain could mean, how long it's going to stick around, it, etc. But each one of those three components, like they're all equally weighted. So 70% or 66.6% or whatever the fuck the math is not even the actual nociception. And when we look at chronic pain, they do nothing to the actual like modulation of nociceptive stimuli. They do nothing. They only deal with cognitive and affective because they understand if that comes down, the actual nociceptive stimuli becomes less intense.
yeah. Um, could you break down uh kind of what happened to you? Um,
Which time?
I know the time, brother, the time. Um,
Okay.
because I know like I mean you just talked about a couple of your injuries and those are like for real, like those are pretty significant injuries. Like
Hmm.
you dealt with them. I mean, from where I'm standing, you dealt with them really well.
Hmm.
Did you get surgery at all or no? Was that just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a
So
okay,
in 2024, I ruptured both my patellar tendons, medial and lateral retinaculum on both
okay,
knees.
okay.
And then I 6 hour surgery, reattached both patellar tendons. And then I was in leg braces for 10 weeks and I relearned how to walk. And I spent 2 weeks in inpatient rehab. And then in 2025, I was coaching a rugby drill and a kid ran into my outstretched arm and the bicep tendon didn't like that. And then I ruptured my distal bicep tendon, which ended up in the ICU stay.
God dang. Yeah. Um, but no, I was curious to hear about um I just watched your video like whatever 3 or 4 days ago that you made
Yeah.
where it was literally the laundry list. So I was wondering
Hmm.
if you could kind of go through that and just kind of give a synopsis and
Sure.
how you got back to like where you are today, lifting and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So essentially, what happened is I'm coaching this rugby drill. Kid kind of trips as he's moving in one direction, runs into my outstretched arm. 210-pound kid running into an outstretched arm. Typically, the bicep will go. And so I got in the next day for an MRI. They're like, "Yep, distal bicep tendons ruptured, retracted 6.6 centimeters." I saw the ortho's PA that day. By the grace of God, I had Kevin Kaplan, who's the ortho for the Jags, um, and he's like a friend of a friend, and so he's like, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll do your surgery." 2 weeks, 2 weeks to the day of the injury, I had my surgery, and interestingly enough, that morning I woke up with like two things. One, this like overwhelming sense of dread that something bad was going to happen, but two, this belief and understanding that like I was probably going to be fine. And about 2 months before I had had the injury, we had met this kid. His name's Bubba Hendricks. He actually wrote a book about it. Um, Met this kid at a wedding, and he had died on the operating table. He literally like flatlined, died on the operating table, went to heaven, had a life review, and then literally was revived and came back to life. Like crazy, right? And his book was released. The book talking about this was released the day of my surgery, and my wife had ordered it. And I got the Amazon notification, and I look at her and I was like, I'm really worried that what happened to Bubba is going to happen to me. And she's like, You're fine. You've had surgery before. You're fine. No, that was incorrect. And so my buddy Skylar drives me to surgery. The whole workup, I'm super fucking anxious. I tell the anesthesiologist, his name's Pete. He's like, Yeah, dude, that's fine. I'll give you a little bit of Xanax. And then I was like, I'm good, whatever. And so they wheel me back. And in my previous surgery, they had induced me, meaning they put you under anesthesia and give you propofol before you go into the operating room, right? They just induce you in kind of the other room and then they wheel you back once you're all fucked up. I was on the operating table before they induced me. And I'm like, oh, even with this Xanax, I am super freaking out right now. And so I was like, you know what, guys? Let's pray. And I made the entire surgical team hold hands and pray before the surgery, and then they induced me. And what happened was my whole family, and we now know this, has a genetic mutation called RYR1. So you remember very well from school how you have the calcium ion channels.
Yeah.
So when RYR1, when you're exposed to sevoflurane, which is a type of anesthetic, all those calcium ion channels in your entire body all open at once and they don't close.
So are you talking about like entire bot like rigor mortis type
Yeah.
skeletal contraction? Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
Sorry, continue.
So entire body goes into essentially failing muscular contraction, right? It's kind of this weird in between, but that requires a huge amount of ATP, which requires a huge, like produces a huge amount of heat. And then also you immediately start to get rhabdo. So then, because you know as well, the vast majority of the potassium in your system is held within your muscles. Then you start to get this massive influx of potassium into the bloodstream. So, Pete, who's my anesthesiologist by the grace of God, he caught the reaction in the first like 60 seconds. He saw my CO2 go through the roof, which means that I'm obviously having a huge metabolic event. And he's like, fuck, this is malignant hyperthermia. And so he runs across the OR and he has to go to this malignant hyperthermia. It's called a crash cart. And he has to mix this medication because it doesn't come pre mixed. And he has to mix this medication. He has to come back and he has to give it to me within the first couple of minutes. Because if you don't, fatality is like 90 or 95%. Even with him giving me the medication, my temperature had gotten up to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're like, all right, he's in hypoxic respiratory failure. We have to keep him intubated. And he's going through this essentially metabolic storm where everything is breaking down. By the grace of God, I make it from the surgical center to the hospital, which was about a 45-minute drive. Um, and on admission to the hospital, my potassium was 7.6. So potassium of 7.6, like your chance of a cardiac event is like 100%. Like they're just waiting for your heart to stop. And they wouldn't let my wife see me until they got my potassium under control because they're like, this guy's going to code and you can't watch your husband die.
Yeah.
And so they give me a huge amount of insulin, huge amount of carbohydrates. That pulls the potassium out of my bloodstream. And then the doctors come out and they're like, hey, this is what's happened. Um, we're going to have to keep him sedated for a couple of days until this reaction wears off. And he'll be good to go. Transfer me to the ICU. The first day, things are starting to not be good, but they're not bad, right? My creatinine kinase is now at 19,000 or something, and which is pretty high. But they're like, you know what? He's in acute kidney injury. He's starting to develop kidney failure, but we're flushing him with fluids, and he should be okay. The Thursday, so 24 hours later, in a small percentage of cases, you have something called recrudescence, which is the reaction comes back again but worse. So this reaction starts up again 24 hours later, and this time it's like worse than the first time. So they're giving me dantrolene, which is the antidote. It's not controlling the reaction, and my temperature's now gotten up to 108 for the second time, and there's so much intracranial pressure that my eyes are starting to push out of my head. And so at one point, they're like, he's probably going to die. And they had the social worker from the hospital come and talk to my wife about last wishes. So they're like, does he want to be cremated? Does he want to be buried? Do you want us to do like, do you have a DNR order? Do you want us to try to resuscitate him? What do you want? And um, they ended up having to put me on this like exothermic cooling suit. So they essentially wrap your whole body in this thing called an Arctic sun, and then it pulls heat away from your body. But my temperature was like 108 for a while. And then they have a conversation with my wife. They're like, hey, his temperature was high enough for long enough that he might be brain dead because we he may have cooked his brain. So they're like, tomorrow we're gonna wake him up and see, but he might be brain dead, in which case you can make the determination to keep him on life support or not. And at that moment, she kind of had this, she was kind of gripped by these visions of like me dying, all this stuff. And she was like, all right, well, and we're very religious. She's like, this is a spirit of fear. This is from the enemy. And so she just starts praying, 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 praying. And the next morning, my body's like destroyed. Like my creatinine kinase is now like 90,000. I'm in end stage kidney failure. They talk to her in the morning. They're like, hey, like we're gonna wake him up a little bit later, but uh he has to go on dialysis. Like his kidneys will not be able to handle this. Like he's gonna need a kidney transplant if we don't put him on dialysis. And she called my buddy Skylar, who was the one who dropped me off at surgery, and they didn't tell him fucking anything. They were literally like, yeah, we're just taking him to the hospital out of an abundance of caution. And so he hadn't heard from me for a couple of days, and he was like, oh, he's just recovering from surgery.
Yeah.
And my wife calls him and she's like, hey, like, you need to come right now. And he had been in Jerusalem over the summer because he had been doing aid work in Palestine. And he had gone to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is where Joseph of Arimathea's tomb is, right? So the tomb that Jesus was buried in. It's a very holy place in Christianity. And he got this little bottle of anointing oil, came home, put it in his cabinet, forgot about it. And then she calls and tells him this, and he's like, oh my God. And so he comes immediately, drives from Kingsland down to Jack's, and he prays over me, anoints me, and he's like, God, I know I can't do anything, but I need you to save my friend. And they did blood work 4 hours later to confirm that I needed to, like, that they were going to be putting me on dialysis. And my creatinine kinase had dropped by like 20 or 25,000 points in 4 hours. And then they wake me up to make sure I'm not brain dead, and I'm not brain dead. And then they do blood work another 4 hours later to confirm that I don't need to go on dialysis. My creatinine kinase dropped another 20,000 points. So in 8 hours, my creatinine kinase dropped 40,000 points. And then the next day, everything normalized again. My creatinine kinase dropped probably another 10,000 points. And then I woke up the next day. So that's what happened.
Dang.
Yeah.
And how was that like how was the transition from that to like where you are now? Like you get out of the hospital, you're like, I don't know what this was. It must have been God that just saved my life. What am I going to do now?
hmm Yeah, and it was a very interesting one because for the first couple of weeks, like they I think the technical term for it is like post-critical illness or post-critical care PTSD, where it's like you just your brain like you cannot come off of like fight or flight. And it was the fucking worst thing of all time. I could not sleep for more than 4 hours. And my wife was the exact same way because she watched me in a coma for 6 days. And I could not sleep for more than 4 or 5 hours. And I was just fucking exhausted all the time. And the other thing too is like when your body gets cooked like that, you essentially end up with metabolic damage, right? Like all of your cells had this huge, massive inflammatory response. And so like even your mitochondria are not producing as much ATP. So you're just generally exhausted. Um, but then, I kind of started to realize and I started to talk about my story and people heard it and they reached out to me. And then I started to have these great conversations, about God and faith with these people. And the fruit of that circumstance was very, 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 very positive. Um, and by the grace of God, by the time I left the hospital, my kidney function was the best it had been in probably 3 or 4 years. I ended up getting pneumonia from the ventilator. My lungs didn't have any scarring. I ended up with this thing called disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is essentially like a critical illness thing where they're like, you're probably gonna fucking die. Um, that resolved. I ended up with a massive blood clot in my left arm because my D dimer was so high. That resolved. I didn't have any lasting neurological deficits. Um, Literally, like, aside from my bicep looking a little bit funny, like I have no lasting effects from the entire thing.
Yeah. That's that's why like that is like I mean I hear stories about like injuries or like surgeries and like there's complications, but that is like so much further beyond. Like you're thinking you're going, I mean, obviously you had these terrible thoughts, like you kept saying, like you
Hmm.
could not shake these thoughts. But like you're going in for a surgery that is relatively, you know, bicep tendon repair. Like it's not even like we're touching any like major arteries or like there's a femoral fracture that's impeding the femoral artery or like you know like any risk that is associated with this surgery is associated with any other surgery but just at higher risk even. So
Yeah.
it's like it's just crazy that like all of this thing just this monster of metabolic damage like out of nowhere just like
Hmm.
I mean, essentially pounded you into a hospital bed for a week,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now you're here with a funny looking bicep. Like,
Yeah.
like, dude, that's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy experience.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that because
Of course.
I didn't want it to be like anything where it brought up memories or anything, but I'm
I'm
glad
good,
that
dude.
I'm
That's what counseling's for.
okay. I'm glad that you can talk about that because I think that's very important for people to I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be the first thought in your brain when you go to do anything, but obviously, like to come to terms with it and to accept the
Mhm.
circumstances that you're in, and especially to accept the outcome. It seems like you're doing well now, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, and it was one of those things where, like, when I got out, like, because you're detoxing off all this shit, right? You're detoxing off of propofol, you're detoxing off of fentanyl, you're detoxing off of midazolam, which is this other horrible benzo they give you. And you feel like you're gonna fucking die. And like I smell, and the grossest part was like I went to kiss my wife when I got home, and she's like, "You smell funny," and I was like, "What do you mean?" And I smelled myself, and I smelled like chemicals, like I stank like chemicals, and I would have these night sweats every night for weeks, and like you feel like you're gonna die because you're actually like pretty close to death, even though you're no longer critically ill. Um, and I had like a couple of nights where I felt really bad going to bed, and I was like, you know what? If I go home and meet Jesus tonight, I've had a pretty good life. Just take care of my wife.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. Um, yeah. How like the main reason I wanted to ask you about that is
Hmm.
because shit happens to everybody in their life. And
Hmm.
what I hope with this is that if anyone were to watch any 5 minutes of this or any other one of my podcasts, they would hear this and they would be like, oh, okay, so this pec tear that I just had surgery on, and now I'm not going to be able to lift heavy for 3 months or whatever it is, like, it's not that bad. And not only is it not that bad, like I'm gonna be fine.
Hmm.
It's not that bad, but I'm still not gonna be as strong as I was. It's not that bad and I'm gonna be fine. It's just gonna take time that would have like passed anyway.
Yeah.
Like so are you like back do you still do powerlifting or I know you don't compete
No.
anymore, but do
Yeah.
you still like train
I do
it?
like, yeah, I do like fun stuff, right? So it's
Okay.
like I mean, I have a very basic program, which is that I do barbell overhead press one day and dumbbell incline as my secondary, and then upper accessories. And then the other day I do barbell incline and dumbbell overhead press as my secondary. And then I do accessories, and then I do a hack squat day, posterior chain, and then I do RDL, and then I do anterior chain. It's like pretty basic, 4 days a week. Um, and I just, you know, anywhere from 8 to 20 reps and try to progress on a week to week and month to month basis. And it's great. I mean, like I got out of the hospital, I was 233 pounds, which is the lightest I've been in probably 12 years. Um, And then it was probably 6 months and a couple weeks. And now I'm 260, which was right around the weight that I was when I got hurt. So 27 pounds back. Zero loss of strength. I set overhead press PR this past week and set an incline PR. I inclined 225 for 20. I overhead pressed 225 for 10. So,
Yeah.
hack squatted 4 plates for 12. Like that, pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. Um, I know you made a video on this about dealing with being at the end of your competition days.
hmm
Is there any advice you could give people who are feeling like they might be on the verge of that, like for any multitude of reasons?
If your life is full enough and you have enough friends and family and other things to keep you occupied, like hobbies, etc., uh, you can bow out gracefully, or you can essentially kind of making it a living hell, and you might have your last two or three meet experiences be fucking miserable. Um, what I wish I would have done is the meet before I got hurt with my knees. It was like a ride the lightning meet, right? Like I tore my hamstring 3 weeks out. I still like black and blue down the whole back of my leg. I still ended up setting a total PR. It was a 5 pound total PR over what I had hit before I had had all my injuries, like 5 years prior. I was able to compete with my uncle who's 65 years old, right? Like all of these, like, kind of like showing myself I was back and I could get back from literally anything. And had that been my last meet, I would have been like, that's the perfect beat, right? Maybe it's not the numbers I wanted, but that's the perfect beat. I got to spend time with my family. My wife got to see me compete at a high level again, and but I got greedy, right? And when people are not willing to accept, it's like, hey, like this might be the end of the road, and they want to push forward. The psychological, I don't know, misery that results is pretty extreme, but you're going to know when it's time to go. And it makes a lot more sense to just accept it and bow out gracefully than to just ruin the end of your career and have it be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I know like in terms of, the grand scale of sports, powerlifting is something that you can pretty much do it forever. Maybe not at like a
hmm
high level, but like you stay healthy, you stay consistent, like there's a pretty decent chance that you can compete at a high level for, 10, 15 plus years. Like
hmm
most of the, you know, people that are doing worlds right now are like well into their 30s. So it's like it's good to see that, but then also it's like some people it just might not be in the cards for you to, compete that long and like that's fine.
hmm
Um One of the biggest things that David talked about when I talked to him, he was just like, you're gonna realize uh after, whenever you end up stopping powerlifting that it's like nobody really gave a fuck how much you squatted. And like if your whole identity is like you are a powerlifter and nothing else, like it's gonna be so much worse than someone who like competes at a high level but also accepts that like they have a life outside of it.
I learned that from Dan Bell, dude. Like, Perfect Storm's an hour and a half south of us. We would go down and train with them. And bro, this dude's like living his best life. He's like out drinking beers. He's fucking going on motorcycle rides with his buddies. He's like drinking beers during his workout, has got a big old dip in, right? Doesn't give a fuck. And he's just having fun. He's just shooting shit. And he's the best dude, man. But for him, it's like he's like, yeah, powerlifting is just one of the things that I do. And even like when I saw the best football players and the best rugby players, the ones who actually had the hardest time progressing were the ones who took it like serious to the point of neuroticism where it would actually cause them to perform worse. But like, I mean, bro, there was a guy that I played football with in university, and he would get high and drunk like the night before games. And I'm not talking like smoking weed. I'm talking like
Like
hard drugs.
like Johnny Manziel.
He was the number one receiver in the country. Bro, and it's one of those things where for him he's like, bro, he's like, I'm fucking good, whatever. And I think it actually allowed him to just like chill out and do what needed to be done.
Yeah. I've
But like, bro, yeah, nuts.
yeah. I've I've had like a good like a healthy conscience in me knowing that like if I have to travel and like there's not a powerlifting gym close to me, I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's not my life. Yeah, is my first bench session back probably gonna suck? Sure. But like, I'm gonna be okay. Like, this is not my entire personality. My life hinges on more than just, moving a barbell up and down and like whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then I have one more kind of like programming question. Um,
Hmm.
is there any way that like SBD would make it into, one, two, three or other would make it into just like a basic hypertrophy program that you would make for a client?
Yeah, because they're fun and they're easy to progress on. And if number on the bar goes up and you go from squatting 225 for 10 to 315 for 10, your legs are going to grow.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one of those ones where some clients might be totally fine with just doing machines, right? And optimizing lines of pull, blah, 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 blah. Some clients are like, I just kind of want to do these things and progress on these things. And like I have, general population kind of lifestyle fitness clients. They all squat and bench press and deadlift because they like squatting, bench pressing, and deadlifting. And it's like, could a more externally stabilized hack squat, blah, 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 be a little bit more beneficial? Sure. But at that point, we're talking gradations of a few percent, right? It's like, okay, it might be 90 versus 95% in terms of total muscular output, blah, 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 blah. Like, it doesn't fucking matter,
Yeah.
right? What matters is that they enjoy the program and they can consistently go in and add weight to their mains and their accessories and they're bought in.
Yeah. I also kind of see that they always have this like devil's advocate where it's like, yeah, you could do what is optimal, but like if you don't train at the same intensity, it's no longer optimal.
No.
So, I mean, having a client that might want to barbell squat just because he or she wants to barbell squat, it's like if you're gonna train hard at a barbell squat, like I would rather you do that than sandbag a leg press 3 times a week. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, okay, I was kind of wondering, I kind of assumed that you were gonna, agree on the same kind of thing, but I was curious to see like where you kind of drew the line, but um
Hmm.
yeah. Okay. I have one like closing question for you
Hmm.
because I mean I know I said keep it to a half hour, been going for like an hour.
I don't give a
But
fuck, dude. Whatever.
all right, that's cool. You made a video on this too, but again, I want this to be in there and I think it'd be a good note to end on. Uh if I had to give you how to have the best training session,
Hmm.
go.
Okay. All right. So starts the night before, right? You're going to make sure that your last meal has a sufficient amount of protein, high degree of carbohydrates. Make sure you have some micronutrients in there too, so your stomach's not bloated the next morning. You can't take a shit. You're going to get up. First thing you're going to do is slam a liter of salt water. Maybe add some coconut water in there so you got your potassium. You're going to wait. You're going to have your breakfast moderately sized. And then you're going to, on the way to the gym, you take 2 liters of coconut water and then, two or three of those Gatorade sticks or liquid IVs or whatever. You're going to mix them together. You're going to drink half it on the way to the gym. You take your pre workout. Um, and then, as you're going through, your general mobility and stuff, you're going to be thinking about what you're doing on your main stuff, right? Okay, what are the cues that I'm thinking about? Right? And all the while you're doing this, always, always, always be listening to music, right? Music that's a BPM of higher than 140 is going to have a performance benefit, right? So and you want to get yourself in the zone and you're thinking about the things you're doing, bro, and you're visualizing it mentally, right? You're rolling out on the foam roller. You're like, I'm going to unrack my squat. I'm going to make sure my upper back side. I'm going to make sure that my brace is on. I'm going to take 2 steps. I'm going to take a gather step. I'm going to make sure I squeeze my upper back, re-brace, and I'm going to make sure that I, hinge enough to hit depth or whatever. And you're running through 10, 15, 20 mentor reps before you even get to, unracking just the bar. And then in all of your warm-ups, make sure your phone's on airplane mode. You're filming your warm-ups. You're looking at what your warm-ups look like. You're looking at where you have deviations and breakdown and technique. And you're taking that into the next session or next set rather. And you're just focusing on exquisite, you know, technically perfect reps. Um, and then by the time it gets to your top set, things should be ripping and roaring pretty good. And then what I always tell people for top sets is always listen to the same song. Always listen to the same song. And the longer you listen to the same song, the better it works. So for me, for probably 6 years, my When We're at Max song was Carrion by Parkway Drive. And because once your brain hears that and it knows that it's temporally associated with some kind of max effort, some kind of intense movement, you're gonna get that neurological upregulation, that dump of adrenaline, all that good stuff. And then you do that, and then finish the rest of your intra workout carbs, get into your accessories, high BPM music, ideally have a training partner. That's going to be your best training session ever.
Thanks, man. That was awesome.